Hello, everyone. Welcome to Ask Mom About Real Estate. My name is Mac. I'm the son.
I'm Becca. I'm the mom.
On today's episode, we're going to be discussing real estate positions. We have talked about a lot of things such as an appraiser, a listing agent, a realtor, and now it's time to dive deeper into exactly what all of those people do in their specific roles. So let's just jump into it with the difference between a real estate agent and a realtor.
Okay. So a real estate agent is somebody who has gone through the process of getting their license in that specific state. So each state has its own licensing. People can be licensed in multiple states. I have 2 different states I do real estate in. And so I've done all the testing and all the classes. I do the continuing education every single year, but I also am a realtor. And that's because I belong to the National Association of Realtors. And I pay a little extra money to be part of that. I take on a whole new code of ethics to be able to do that. I swear in all the good things to make sure that I'm doing the best for my clients that I can.
So to become a realtor and a part of the National Association of
Realtors.
Of Realtors, is that a process that you just go through once, or something that
Mhm.
you also renew every year?
No. Well, you pay money every
Oh,
year.
you have to renew it through the
Yeah,
payment every year.
but they do offer different things for my benefit. Like they're the ones that kind of took care of that lawsuit that happened last year.
Right.
And so when you're a part of the National Association of Realtors, you're under this umbrella that has different options to help you as a realtor,
Mhm.
which a lot of people say realtor because there is an A in there, but it's just realtor.
The real term is realtor.
The real term is realtor.
Keep it easy.
Keep it easy.
So with realtors and becoming associated with the National Association of Realtors, you have to pay, but do you also have to take a test, or is it just something you
Mhm.
pay for?
Yeah,
And
you
you
do
swear in
swear
too.
in, you take on that code of ethics. You know
Mhm.
how police officers and lawyers, they raise their right hand and they swear in? That's
Mhm.
what we do as realtors
So would you
also.
say that majority of real estate agents are also
Yeah,
realtors?
yeah.
Gotcha. And you mentioned also that you have to be licensed in the specific state that you're selling in.
Mhm.
Do any licenses across the nation um, not only allow you to sell in one state, but also multiple, or are they all specific to the state?
Once you have your real estate license, it gives you the license to sell real estate, but each state has different laws.
Mm,
And so for you to be licensed in a new state, you have to learn all the laws of that state to be
gotcha.
able to sell property in that specific state.
So each test is different. It's
Mhm.
just per state.
Yeah, so when I do a test as a real estate agent, you take a national test and then you take a state test.
Mm,
When I got my license and I started in Idaho, but when I got my license in Arizona, I didn't have to take the national test again. I only had to take the Arizona state test.
gotcha.
And they do. They have different guidelines and different laws down here for
Mhm.
realtors.
And you're renewing your license every year, aren't you?
Mhm. Well, every 2 years, actually.
Gotcha.
Yep.
And does that process entail taking the test again?
I have to take tests, but just with the classes that um, every year I have to do continuing education. And each one of those
Mm.
has a test that I take to make sure I listened to
So that's what the continuing
Mhm.
education is.
Yeah,
Okay.
which I pay money for.
Right. All of it entails money. You're
Yeah.
paying to be a
I think
realtor.
people think that it's super easy to become a real estate agent, and it's not that it's difficult, but we never stop learning,
Mhm.
and rules and laws, just like accounting, like your tax laws are always changing, real estate laws are always changing, and so we work hard to stay up on those
Mm,
things that are changing so that we
gotcha.
can help our clients the best.
Yeah. And what does the process look like to become a real estate agent and to become licensed? How long is the process generally? And you mentioned the two tests that you take as well.
Mhm. So, they have 2 different, sections, if you will, that they do, and when I was in real estate school, that was a long time ago, when I was
Things might have changed then.
about 15 years ago, I had to do 3 weeks in one class and 3 weeks in another class. In each class, I had to take a test to pass the classes, and then I had to go and take my real estate test, the national and the state test. It's pretty simple. You do have to pay money, obviously.
Mhm.
Anything takes money. to become licensed anywhere. And so that was the process. Nowadays, I've had friends that have taken their classes in 2 weeks. They go all day to class.
Wow.
When I was doing mine, I was actually working during the day, so I could only go in the evening. So they
Mhm.
have different options for different people with different situations in their life that to allow them to go to school to get their license.
Yeah. I remember when you were preparing to take the national test or the state test, I mean, sorry.
Mm,
We were in Idaho at the time, and you had to drive from where we were living to Boise.
mm.
Is that still the case, like, in Arizona when you're taking the national or the state test? Are you driving to Phoenix, or can you take it all online now?
No, you can never take it online. It's like
Mm.
a legit test where, your testing centers at
Yeah,
school
yeah.
where you go and you sit in a little cubicle and it's on the computer. They make sure you don't have anything on you. They essentially pat you down
Yeah,
to
yeah.
make sure you don't have a calculator and all that stuff. And so you have to go to a testing center. And one of the reasons why you have to go to the testing center or drive sometimes is
Mhm.
because the test is offered on the time that's great for you.
Mm,
And I probably could have taken it somewhere else. They don't have one in Idaho Falls, but they had one like in Pocatello. So I could have
gotcha.
taken one somewhere else if it was the best place for me to take it.
Mhm. That
Yeah.
makes sense, that makes
Yeah.
sense. So shifting away from realtors and real estate agents, would you essentially put them under the same umbrella, I
Yeah.
guess? Yeah.
For sure.
So shifting away from that and going into, like, a listing agent,
Mhm.
what's their job, what's their responsibility, and what does that process look like to even become one if you know?
Well, it seems super simple. Obviously, when you list your property, you're going to list with an agent, which means they become the listing agent.
Mhm.
So when you're selling your home, that term is listing agent. And they're the ones that are responsible for making sure that they do their due diligence to help you best to sell your home at the highest price that they can.
Gotcha. So listing and buyer's agent are also realtors or real
Mhm.
estate agents,
Yes.
but it's just a subcategory
Mhm.
specified for what they're doing.
Mhm.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I would even say they could be specialists. So, like, I was on a team when I was in
Right.
Idaho, and the guy that I worked with, he was the listing agent in our office, and I was the buyer's agent. And I would call us specialists. I was a specialty buyer's agent, and he was a
Mhm.
specialty listing agent. That's all he did. That's all I did. So we became kind of specialists in our fields.
Gotcha.
But realtors can do either or.
Mhm. And in my eyes, being an outsider in the realtor world, I'm looking at your team, and it's not just you and your partner who's a listing agent and you're the buyer's
Mhm.
agent, but that kind of seems like the most important roles within a team.
For sure.
What were some of the other people that were on your team? What were their
We had a
responsibilities?
showing agent. He also was a licensed agent, but I did all the negotiating and the consultations and helped the buyers through the process of their sale or their purchase, but I never showed properties usually. He did all of the showings. He would take them to the homes and open the doors for them. He'd go to their inspection usually, stuff like that.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
And then we also had like admin who were helping us with our paperwork. And I'm a solo agent now, and I still have someone that helps me with my paperwork because lots of times realtors are horrible at making sure their paperwork is where it needs to be.
Yeah.
We're good at contracts, but we're bad at like making sure the paperwork gets all filed away
You
properly.
need somebody who's more organized for that. Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we've also talked about in the home buying timeline, appraisers.
Mhm.
And if you just want to quickly explain what they do
Yeah, an
again.
appraiser essentially is he works for the bank
Hmm.
and the buyer to make sure that the price that they have offered and gotten accepted on their contract is the price that the home is worth so that the lender will lend the money on that price.
Gotcha. So break down what a broker is, because I've heard that term a lot, but I'm not really familiar with it.
Yeah, a broker, I think a lot of people get confused. I was confused about who a broker was and what a broker did. Um, a broker is I usually call the broker my dad. He's he I mean, I've had a female broker too, so mom or dad.
The parent.
Yeah, a parent. They are kind of so for instance, any brokerage you work for with, you have a broker. And that broker, I just kind of envision they're kind of like this umbrella over you to protect you.
Mm.
So they have taken additional classes and additional tests to be able to become somebody who can kind of keep the realtors in check. So they make sure all of our paperwork is where it's supposed to be,
Mm.
other than our admins. They double check all of our paperwork. They're the ones liable if we do something wrong.
Oh, wow.
The liability actually is on the broker. So when I write a contract for a buyer, even though I am their representative on the contract, the broker is actually who they have the contract with.
And so their name is also on that contract.
Correct.
So with the broker and he
Mhm.
being the one that is responsible for anything that may happen, especially legally, with that being said, where's his involvement with commissions? Because obviously the realtor is the one helping the buyer or the seller, and there's commissions involved within that. So where does the broker come in?
Oh, that is such a good question. Um, I don't think about that very often. So that was even fun for me to think about. So when I get a commission check, which I don't personally get a commission check, it goes straight to the brokerage.
Mm.
That's where the broker reviews all the files. He reviews that the commission matches with what the contract says. And then the broker splits that up, and the brokerage keeps some of the money that I bring in as a realtor on that contract.
Gotcha.
So the brokerage keeps the money. The broker doesn't keep the money.
Mm-hmm.
But lots of times brokers are compensated differently than realtors. They're more of an employee, I guess, if you will,
Yeah.
of the brokerage. Lots of brokers actually own the brokerage.
Yeah.
And so, especially those little boutique brokerages, they will own the brokerage. Like the first brokerage that I worked for, you know that one really well.
Right.
They owned the brokerage I worked for, they actually owned, and there was only like 10 agents in that one.
Mm.
And so when the money went to the brokerage, it also went to the owners, right?
Gotcha.
And so the broker will get paid separately. Sometimes the brokers don't even actually practice real estate while they're a broker, for the very reason that they don't want to be competing with the agents that they're protecting.
Gotcha.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. So a lot of the times a broker frequently is a realtor, a real estate agent.
They have to be. They're required.
Oh, they also are required
Yeah,
to be
so
licensed.
they're required to be licensed as a realtor, and then they also have to get their brokerage license also, their broker license.
Gotcha.
And so they have to know their stuff in and out,
Mm-hmm.
because at the end of the day, they could be fined greatly, like a monetary fine, if they do not make sure all their paperwork's in order and their realtors are protected.
Okay, so shifting away from brokers, I've heard you talk about engineers and mention
Mhm.
engineers before, and I know that they're somewhat similar to an inspector, but what are their key differences?
Yeah, an inspector goes through and inspects your whole home, kind of like that honeydew, that glorified honeydew list that I talked to you about in that other episode. Engineers are like a contractor that comes in after that's done. If there's some engineer inspections or work that need to be done, I've used an engineer when I'm doing a transaction with a manufactured home to make sure the manufactured home is placed properly on the foundation. We'll talk about that in a future episode.
Yeah.
And then I've used an engineer when there's been foundational issues that the inspector's called out, and he comes and inspects the foundation to make sure the foundation's secure. Mostly it's structure that an engineer looks at. We've also had like unleveled floors before, and the engineer comes in to make sure that there is anything wrong with that.
Gotcha. So would you say that engineers frequently are used within inspections or within looking at a home, or is it just on the occasion?
It's super occasional.
Gotcha.
I maybe have used an engineer 6 or 7 times in my 15 years of transactions.
But an inspector does look at the foundation just to make sure an engineer doesn't need to come in.
Yeah, usually. An inspector can look at things and say, you probably need to get a structural engineer in here to make sure that everything's okay.
Okay. Gotcha. I've also heard you talk about a title company. What's the role of a title company within a transaction, within working with realtors or brokers? What's their role?
So I use the title company a lot. And the title company, there's different people that that play different roles within the title company. Title company is somebody who essentially allows us to find out about the property so they can do property searches for us. And they also are the ones who can um, hold money in escrow and start our transaction. And they're the ones that close on the property for us, which essentially means that escrow officer that we work with, they're the ones that are going through the whole transaction with us. They receive the contract. They search not the escrow officer, but the title side of the title company searches, make sure that the title on the house is free of any liens other than maybe a mortgage or some taxes that need to be paid.
Are liens specific to financial?
So liens are financial debts against the property, essentially. So a
Oh, so if
mortgage
somebody
is a
did,
lien,
okay.
and so are taxes. If
Mhm.
someone has unpaid taxes on their property, which if they have a mortgage, they shouldn't because that comes out of the mortgage. But and then like a contractor can put a lien against a property. Unpaid child support can be a lien against a property. And so that title person's checking all of those things to make sure that there's not any liens that are going to prevent the sale going through.
So a contractor who built the home.
Not usually built the
Okay.
home because usually the mortgage covers that.
Gotcha.
But a contractor who comes and does like some remodeling and the person hasn't paid for the services that they performed.
The sale of the home will go towards that payment.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Any of those liens on that property, as long as the money will cover all of those liens, they either like them to be paid off prior to closing, or there's an agreement between the seller and the contractor that those things will be paid off at time of closing.
Gotcha. And you mentioned escrow agent?
An
What-
escrow officer,
No, escrow officer.
they take the contract, they make sure that the earnest money we've talked about in prior episodes gets deposited into escrow account
Mhm.
for the start of the mortgage, essentially. So an escrow account holds your earnest money, which covers like prepaid taxes, insurance, all of that stuff.
Gotcha. And an escrow officer is affiliated with the title company.
Mhm. Yeah, and they're the ones that helps us through the whole transaction and keeps us in the loop with what's happening over on the title side, and helps us to know if there's anything
The
with
escrow officers are doing this? Okay,
Mhm.
okay.
And the lender is the one who's like communicating with the escrow officer to make sure all the money is going where the money is supposed to go.
Mhm.
And that's who the lender will send the money to the escrow officer, and they're the ones that do the money exchange between the buyer and the seller.
Mhm. And the lender within a transaction is the person who just makes sure or who ensures that the buyers can qualify for the amount that they're looking for on the home and allowing them to be able to get that money.
Yeah, and they keep the buyer in check, the borrower in check, and then they balance with the escrow officer at time of closing to make sure that this much money's coming, all of these numbers match up with all of the different fees and all the different costs that are, that go along with the transaction.
There's so much communication that happens between all these different positions within real estate for just one transaction.
Yeah. It's crazy. I don't think people understand. It's not like buying a pack of gum at the
Right.
store. Like there's a lot that goes in. And I think that's why I love that there's so many different roles. And I love being able to have relationships with all these people that help us so much during the buying and selling.
Yeah, with all that different communication or, means of people that things need to be checked off through, is it hard to stay organized during a transaction, or do most people handle their what they're responsible for well?
Yeah, I think, well, that's why you build relationships with the people that work the way that you want to. So I can't necessarily steer a buyer towards a lender, but I can give them a few lenders that I know are always going to
And they
do
can
a
always
good
shop
job.
around for.
Yeah, and I can recommend a good title company, and I can recommend a good inspector, and I can recommend people that I know that do a good job, that work the same way that I do, that have a high integrity, that are super honest, that aren't super crazy expensive. I have relationships with all contractors, electricians, plumbers, like people that I can always refer back and forth and make sure that my buyers and sellers are well taken care of
Mhm.
during the transaction and after.
Yeah. So looking at it from a buyer and seller's perspective, what positions or what people are they reaching out to and finding for the transaction itself versus the realtor going and having that relation where the seller and buyer don't necessarily need to be involved?
It really depends on the buyer and seller. At the end of the day, I would like to be the person behind the curtain. So if they choose me as their real estate agent, their realtor, we've
Yeah.
just discussed that.
Right.
As their realtor, I would love it if they're like, you just do everything.
Gotcha.
And then I only am contacting the buyer or seller if there's something important that they need to make a decision on.
Mhm.
There are some things I have to be careful with. Like I really can't tell a person to use a certain lender. That's against my rules.
Oh, okay. You
And
can give suggestions,
I can give
but it's their
suggestions,
choice.
recommendations. Same thing with inspectors. I don't love to force an inspector on someone. Usually give them a couple to pick from and they can interview and see what costs are and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
Other than that, they get to pick their lender and their realtor, and hopefully the lender and realtor kind of walk them through the rest of the people if they need to.
Okay, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to episode 7 of Ask Mom About Real Estate. We seriously appreciate it. We do try to make every episode as short as they can be and as concise as they can, but we really felt it was important that this episode be a little bit longer because there are so many things to understand within real estate positions as a buyer, as a seller, or within the real estate world. But with that being said, we hope you enjoyed the episode and we'll see you on the next one.